In ordinary time, we are challenged, if not commanded, to live out the life that Christ has given to us. We've spent months listening to the work of Christ, his desire for man, his love for mankind. He gave his life to set us free from sin. And not only to set us free from sin, but set us free from the effects of sin. Because if there is no sin, there is no effects. Sin brought the evil upon mankind. And Christ came to destroy that and to give us life. Christ shares with us the life he's given and how we are to handle it. The story in the gospel today is a story that comes from a lawyer questioning Christ. Not because he wants information. He already knows the information. He wants to test Christ. Remember, they were against Christ and they were trying to do everything they can to humiliate him, to destroy him. So he comes to Christ as a lawyer, and he says to him, "What must I do to have eternal life?" Now notice his question. His question was very self-centered. What do I do that I may have eternal life? This was what Christ wanted us to see, because that's not the way of our life. He's already given to us everything. We don't need to be seeking it. We need to be using it. The lawyer, typical of a lawyer, he wants details. So Christ says to him, "What is the law? What do you see in the law? How do you interpret the law?" Christ played his game. And so the lawyer quotes the law. "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, and thy neighbor as thyself." And Jesus said to him, "You have said well. You've spoken the truth." Now that in itself should have said to that lawyer, "You already know." But the lawyer wasn't satisfied. He wanted to justify himself. And so he says, who is my neighbor? Now this question probably is justified with the Jews, because the Jews felt they were the only people that were God's people. They didn't like anybody else, and they had nothing to do with others. They were the elite, and they were the special people. And so who was a neighbor? He knew that if he was following the Jewish law, that his neighbor were the Jews. Why was he asking Christ this question? Well, probably the Holy Spirit was the one at work here, wanting to straighten things out. And so Jesus gives him a story. Now this story is not what you would call a parable, because this story is very real. It was happening almost every day in this area. He talks about this man who travels down the road from Jericho to Jerusalem. And he is come upon by bandits who traditionally are working on that road to rob the travelers. It was their way of life. This road was a road that went from Jericho to Jerusalem. It was a very narrow road. It was a very rugged, rocky area with a lot of curves in the road, and so it was a place where the robbery could be easily done because they could hide behind the rocks around the curves and they could catch people off guard. Most people would not travel alone on this road. They would travel in groups because that would threaten the bandits, give them a little more safety. But this man had gone alone on this road, not a wise thing. And so he was attacked. They robbed him, they stripped him of all of his clothes, beat him, and left him half dead, naked on the side of the road. They did this. Why take all of his clothes? Because if they took the clothes away, he couldn't chase them, he couldn't go after them, he would be limited in what he could do. So they had all these schemes and these plans that they would use. Jesus says then, a priest comes along the road going to Jerusalem. Here again, this is a pattern which is normal in that day, because priests were out in the areas around Jerusalem where they would live, where there were ministries in those areas. Every tribe had a priest or several priests, and then they were appointed a period of time when they would go to Jerusalem and when they would minister in the tabernacle, the temple, and that was their task. And this priest was on his way to ministry in Jerusalem. He comes upon this man, he sees the man, and he goes opposite side of the road and bypasses him, perhaps thinking, I can say, well, I didn't see him. But his whole principle was perhaps he felt he had to be in Jerusalem for the tabernacle, the temple, to do his ministry. And so he couldn't stop. He had to be on time, because the tabernacle, the temple, was very exacting in its ministry. The Pharisees, the Sadducees were legalists. So he was perhaps under that pressure. But also, there was a Jewish law that if you touched a dead man, a dead person, you would be quarantined for a certain number of days, maybe up to 14 days or more. And you couldn't do anything as far as ministry was concerned, and you were to be separated from the community. So here he was facing several different situations wherein he obviously made a quick decision, I'm not going to help this guy. Then Jesus said the second one that comes along is a Levite. Again, a Jew. This time, this Jew, this Levite, looks at the man. He doesn't touch him, but he looks, then he goes away and does not help him at all. And continues on his journey and leaves him there on the side of the road. The third person to come, of course, that Levite possibly also is thinking something about the bandits putting a dead body on the road, thinking that you will stop and help that person or see what you can do with that person, and then they will attack you. It's a decoy, perhaps. So he wasn't going to get involved, went to the other side of the road and left. The third person was Samaritan, not a Jew. He is cast out of, as far as the Jewish people were concerned. They had no hope. They were outcasts. And this Samaritan was possibly a businessman who traveled maybe on this road often. He understood the situations, but he was a man who had compassion. He stopped. He then got off of his horse. He ministered healing to the man that was on the road with the oil, the wine, and then wrapped him in bandages, which obviously he was prepared for things like this, because why would he have these things with him? He was one who was compassionate in his being. He then puts the man on his horse, takes him to a local inn. Obviously there were inns along this road, or maybe one. He took him in, he took care of him, he ministered to him, he ministered healing to him. The next day, when it was time for him to leave, he went to the innkeeper. He paid his 2 denarii. And he told the innkeeper, I'm asking you, take care of this man. I'm leaving this amount of money for you because the 2 denarii was more than enough to pay his bill. And if there's anything more than this that it costs you, when I come back the next time, I will pay you. Here was a man, not a Jew, not religious as far as the Jews were concerned. He had credibility with the inn. The innkeeper had given him credit. I'll do this for you because you're going to pay me later. It's amazing because this was totally contrary to Judaism. The lawyer was a Jew, and Christ was ministering to him as he was ministering to other people, even including the Samaritans, because Christ was of the Father, which is the Father of all. Christ then said to the lawyer, who do you think was the one ministering to his neighbor? And he said, the one who showed mercy. Christ then said to him, go and do likewise. He speaks this to us in such a manner, such a way where it confuses us perhaps in some ways, but it also challenges us to realize that life is more than just what we have. God shows that through the law, we have been given all we need. When we have the right attitude toward Him, then we are empowered to go beyond that and reach out to others. Christ came to minister to the lives of mankind. That was His life. And He's saying to the Jews, which they didn't understand, He's also saying to us, your life is also one that is intended for ministry to others. We look through the scriptures, we find in the writing of Peter, in 2 Peter, where it tells us that God has given to us everything pertaining to life and godliness. It tells also that we've received all our needs met. Scriptures tell us that we've been taken care of. He's taken away the sin. He's taken away the iniquity. He's taken away all those things which come from those things. He's given to us a new life. And that new life is meant to affect and change the life of those around us. And so He's challenging this lawyer. Now this is a lawyer. Lawyers are ones that know everything but don't do anything. They can tell you what's right, but do they do right? No, maybe not. I have to be careful. I don't want a lawyer after me. But they have this imagery that they are the ones who judge everything and say what's right and what's wrong, but it maybe doesn't affect them. Here this lawyer knew the law, the Jewish law. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. He knew the law, but he didn't do it. The Jews knew the law, but they weren't living the law. They were only taking care of their own if they took care of anybody. And Christ was saying to them and saying to us, I've given you. If you understand what I've given, then you have a responsibility to take what I've given and use it for others. Remember, Christ said, the things that I have done you shall do, and even greater. That which he's empowered us with is not for our glory. It is for us to use on behalf of others. In the writings to the church at Corinth, when Paul expressed the giving of the gifts, he made it very clear, these gifts are not for you, they are for the common good. The attitude of Christianity, reaching out and touching the lives of others, changing their lives, and causing them to be a source of hope for the world around us. The reason, perhaps, and I've said this many times, that the world is in the condition it's in is because the church has not been what God intended it to be. We are not to be self-centered. We are to be reaching out. We're to be touching the lives of others and helping, being the source. I would say we are conduits. The power of God flows through us. It doesn't stop here. The ability of God flows through us. It doesn't stop here. As far as the priest was concerned, as far as the Levite was concerned, he was sacred. And so he couldn't help the one who was not sacred. How would he know who this man was? Very clearly. He had been stripped of his clothes. He had no clothes. They would be able to see, is he circumcised, is he not circumcised? They would know he's not one of us. And that would have a tremendous impact upon their area of responsibility. He's not one of us. I have no responsibility here. We have responsibility to mankind. And it would say perhaps here, and I'd be very careful to say this, that as far as the priest was concerned, he felt his ministry was priority. But what Christ was saying to us is the saving of a life is more important than the doing of your ministry. Because that is your ministry, to save life. It may not be in the pulpit, it may not be in the sanctuary, it may not be in the tabernacle, temple, but the saving of life is wherever there is the need, you meet the need. You use what God has given to you to bring life to those around you. You're not limited as far as your ministry is concerned. Both the priest and the Levite, they were only ministering to the Jews. Christ came not just for the Jews. He came for all mankind. And one of the problems I see, and I've said this several times, the church is very much me. I call it meology. It's me. Our songs are, God, you did this for me. God, you blessed me. God, that. The advertisements, come and be blessed. Totally wrong imagery. We are to be thankful. We come to worship. We come to thank God, to be empowered to go out and to take what God has given us out to others. That's our task. It's not just because we go to church, but we go to church to be empowered, to be encouraged, and to be thankful, and to receive the life that God has given to us through Christ, so that we can be the ministry. We can be the ministry. There's an Orthodox book that's been written. It's called For the Life of the World. This is what we are. We're here for the life of the world. That's what Christ's ministry was. His ministry was for the life of the world. We have his ministry now. Our task is for the life of the world. When we take care of our own only, we're not taking care of the ministry God has given to us. We're to reach out, touch the lives of others. If we would analyze this story, the Good Samaritan, you would probably have to say this was Jesus, because Jesus ministered to everybody. He didn't just isolate himself. The oil and the wine, maybe the Eucharist, the bread and the wine, that which would come in the sacraments of the church. The inn would be the church, because that's where the healing takes place. Church is like a hospital. These things teach us the remedies for healing, how that we are all to be involved in that. And that was what Christ did when he sent out the apostles. One of the things he told them, heal the sick. The 2 denarii that was paid with possibly the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's just an analyzation of this picture, because it says something to us very strongly, because it is the pattern God has given to us. The man that was beaten possibly was Adam, because Adam was beaten by the devil, destroyed. No one came to his aid to help him, and he brought it upon the whole world. But Christ came to set us free, and the Samaritan was the picture of Christ's ministry to those who are lost and those who are hurting. How that this is the responsibility we have. The horse, when the Samaritan put the man on the horse, it's like putting him on Christ. Christ was the one to carry the load. He's the one that carries our load. He carried our load to the cross. Whatever the load may be, whatever the need may be, he's there to take care of that need for us. And that is the picture that he shows us. And he challenges us. He challenges us, and he says, go and do the same. That's the story of our life. It's a story, a picture of what God has given to us. Who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Not the person next door necessarily. That's not the only one. It may be something far different than what we might think, because this Samaritan was not a part of the Jewish people, but yet he was the neighbor, and he was to be given the help. The Jews had all they needed. They should have been helping others. We have been given everything by Christ. We lack in no good thing. Everything pertaining to life and godliness has been given to us. Everything. Everything. We lack in nothing. We need to renew our mind, as it says in Romans chapter 12. Renew our mind and prove the will of God. Prove it. To prove it, we must know the will. And God's will for us is life and the fullness of life. That's what he wants for us. We are not to let the dead or the dying, the hurting, be there alone. We're to heal them, bring life to them. And that healing is more than just physical. It's more than physical. It's total healing that God intends for all of us.